Let's start at the beginning. Jeff Lindsay's first novel, Darkly Dreaming Dexter, came out in 2004 and introduced the world to a serial killer who hunts other killers. Showtime bought the rights and turned it into what we now know as Dexter's first season. For a while, the overlap was almost one-to-one. We got the ice truck killer arc. We got Dexter's cold inner narration. We saw Deborah Morgan written as a tough but vulnerable cop trying to find her place in the department. Season 1 pulled heavily from Lindsay's book, enough that fans assumed this was the blueprint for the whole series. But after that, everything split. Showtime's Season 2 was nothing like Jeff Lindsay's second book, Dearly Devoted Dexter. The show went in a completely different direction. Instead of picking up the Dr. Danko storyline from the novels, which featured a grotesque torturer who dismembered victims in disturbing ways, the show gave us a season centered on James Doakes closing in on Dexter and Lila stirring chaos in his personal life. Same characters, completely different arcs. So why did Showtime ditch the novels so quickly? The answer comes down to 3 big reasons. First, creative freedom. The writers didn't want to be locked into Jeff Lindsay's world. Dearly Devoted Dexter introduced Dr. Danko, a villain so grotesque and surreal that it would have been almost impossible to adapt for mainstream TV. He mutilated his victims in ways that pushed even horror boundaries. Showtime's creative team decided they could tell better stories if they used the books as inspiration rather than gospel. That's why Season 2 focused more on Dexter being hunted himself, flipping the script and putting pressure on his double life. Second, tone and marketability. The novels are darker, stranger, and far more grotesque than most fans realize. Book Dexter is a colder, more detached figure who sometimes feels like a monster even to the reader. He's less human than Michael C. Hall's portrayal. And while that works in print, television needs relatability. Showtime wanted viewers to connect with Dexter, to actually like him, not just be horrified by him. That meant softening him, giving him humor, humanity, and moments of doubt. Following the books too closely would have risked alienating a mainstream audience. And third, character development. Jeff Lindsay's books are written almost entirely from Dexter's point of view. Side characters exist, but they're not nearly as fleshed out as they are in the series. Showtime wanted Deborah, Rita, Doakes, Batista, and even Masuka to have bigger arcs and personalities. To do that, they had to step away from the books and build their own universe. By Season 2, they were essentially writing original material, only loosely inspired by Lindsay's world. Even Jeff Lindsay himself admitted this. He publicly supported the show's direction, saying he understood television had to take liberties. He even joked that once Showtime took off, his own novels were competing with a completely different version of Dexter. But here's where it gets really interesting. By ignoring the books, Showtime also erased some of the most shocking storylines that casual fans never even knew existed. For example, in the novels, Deborah learns Dexter's secret much earlier than in the show. That revelation changes their entire dynamic. Imagine if TV Deborah had discovered Dexter's dark passenger in Season 2 or 3, the entire series would have taken a radically different path. Then there's Rita's children. In the books, Aster and Cody aren't just normal kids. They're hinted to be budding sociopaths themselves, mini-Dexters who need guidance. Book Dexter actually considers training them under a version of Harry's code. That storyline alone could have completely shifted how viewers saw him, not just as a killer, but as a twisted father figure shaping the next generation. Showtime completely avoided that. And the villains? Whole arcs disappeared. Beyond Dr. Danko, the novels introduced enemies and scenarios Showtime never touched. Some were darker, some more surreal, but all of them added to the idea that Book Dexter lived in a world much stranger than what Showtime was willing to show. Most importantly, Book Dexter himself is different. He's colder, less humanized, more alien in how he relates to people. Michael C. Hall's Dexter was written to be someone we could root for, a broken man we wanted to see survive. But Lindsay's Dexter was far less sympathetic. He's more predator than person. Fans who only watched the series never saw that version. And that raises the big question. Would Showtime's Dexter have been better, or maybe even too dark, if they had stuck closer to the novels? Some argue the show benefited from branching out, creating legendary arcs like the Trinity Killer that weren't in the books at all. Others feel like the novels had rawer, more daring material that TV viewers were robbed of. In the end, Showtime ditched half the Dexter novels because they needed freedom, accessibility, and a version of the character that audiences could live with week after week. But the books still stand as a parallel universe, a darker, stranger Dexter that many fans will never see unless they pick them up. And here's the craziest part. The ending of the Dexter novels is nothing like the TV series or New Blood. Jeff Lindsay wrapped up his story in a completely different way, one that would have shocked every Showtime fan if it had been adapted. But that's a story for another video. So now I'll ask you, would you have wanted Showtime to stick closer to Jeff Lindsay's vision, or do you prefer the version we got on TV? Let me know in the comments. And if you're still watching, drop Book Dexter in the comments so I know you're one of the real fans. You think you know Dexter Morgan from the TV show? But the Dexter in Jeff Lindsay's novels, he's far darker, colder, and less human than Showtime ever dared to show. And the differences are so extreme that once you see them, you'll realize the TV version almost feels like a completely different man. On television, Michael C. Hall brought Dexter to life with wit, sarcasm, and even flashes of humanity. He cracked dry jokes in voiceovers, wrestled with guilt, and slowly evolved into someone audiences could weirdly root for. But in the books, Dexter isn't someone you'd want to root for at all. He's not conflicted. He's not struggling with morality. He's a predator, a sociopath who describes murder in a detached, clinical way as if he's writing a manual. And that's the first big difference between Book Dexter and TV Dexter. Book Dexter doesn't care about people. Not really. His inner voice isn't witty or self-deprecating. It's cold, emotionless, and even cruel. Where TV Dexter often tried to convince himself he was normal, Book Dexter openly admits he's not. He doesn't even pretend. That layer of charm we saw on Showtime, that was a mask created for television audiences who needed a reason to follow him week after week. Without it, the real Dexter in Jeff Lindsay's novels is almost alien. Take his relationship with Deborah. On the show, Deb is his anchor, emotional, messy, loyal, and deeply connected to her brother. In fact, her love for Dexter becomes one of the most important arcs in the series. But in the books, their relationship is awkward and distant. He doesn't feel the same emotional bond. He helps her because it benefits his cover, not because he loves her. To him, Deb is just another human in his orbit, not the person he can't live without. For fans who only know the TV show, that's a shocking change. And then, there's Rita. In the early seasons of the show, Dexter starts out seeing Rita as cover, someone safe and damaged enough not to notice his own secrets. But as time goes on, TV Dexter begins to genuinely care for her. He connects with her kids. He even starts to think of himself as a father. Those moments humanize him. They make us feel like maybe, just maybe, there's something good inside him worth saving. But Book Dexter never gets there. His relationship with Rita remains cold and utilitarian. He uses her as a disguise, a shield to make him look normal. But there's no real emotional growth. He doesn't care for her children in any meaningful way. In fact, he describes them almost like props. Where TV Dexter tried to convince audiences that he was more than a monster, Book Dexter proves over and over again that he's exactly that. And then, there's the infamous Dark Passenger. On the show, the Dark Passenger is symbolic. It's the voice of his urges, his impulses, the thing Harry's code was designed to control. But in the books, the Dark Passenger is something else entirely. It's almost supernatural, described as a literal presence that guides him, speaks to him, and sometimes even controls him. Fans who only know the show would never expect that. Showtime kept Dexter grounded in psychology, but Jeff Lindsay made him feel almost possessed. That's how otherworldly his darkness really was in the novels. So why did Showtime change all of this? The answer is simple: relatability. Book Dexter was too cold, too inhuman, to keep mainstream audiences engaged for 8 seasons. Television needs someone you can laugh with, feel for, and ultimately root for, no matter how flawed. That's why we got Dexter the anti-hero instead of Dexter the pure predator. And it worked. People loved TV Dexter. They debated whether he could be redeemed, whether he was a hero or villain. But those same debates don't exist in the books. There, Dexter is never painted as redeemable. He's a killer first and always. And when you really think about it, that makes Book Dexter terrifying in a way the show never could be. Because he isn't hiding behind guilt or love or family, he isn't broken, he isn't battling himself. He's simply doing what predators do, hunting. And the most chilling part? He doesn't see anything wrong with it. Take some of his descriptions of murder. In the novels, he talks about killing with a cold, methodical detail, like he's describing how to fix a car engine. There's no hesitation, no emotional fallout, no guilt, just clinical precision. Compare that to the show, where Dexter often spirals emotionally, panics when people get close to his secret, and wrestles with whether he can live a normal life. That conflict is what drove the TV series. But the novels strip that away and leave us with a predator who doesn't care. So which version is the real Dexter Morgan? That depends on what you think Jeff Lindsay intended. The novels give us the raw, unfiltered version, a killer who happens to look human but doesn't feel human. The TV show gave us an anti-hero, someone who could wrestle with morality, build relationships, and trick us into caring about him. Both are fascinating. Both work in their own way, but only one is truly terrifying. And that's the point. Showtime gave us a Dexter we could fall in love with. Jeff Lindsay gave us the monster hiding beneath that mask, the one who doesn't want your sympathy, your love, or your forgiveness. Just your silence while he sharpens his knife. So tell me, do you prefer the charming, conflicted Dexter from television or the ruthless alien version from the novels? Drop your answer in the comments, because I want to know which one you think is the real Dexter Morgan. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the Dexter universe. Because one thing's for sure, the Dexter you saw on TV wasn't the whole story.
You think you know Deborah Morgan from the TV show, but the Deborah in Jeff Lindsay's novels, she's almost unrecognizable. The differences between Book Deb and TV Deb are so shocking that fans who only watched the series never saw the real Deborah Morgan hiding in plain sight. Because in the novels, Deborah is a completely different character. She swears like a sailor, she's impulsive, and her relationship with Dexter takes turns that the show never dared to touch. Her personality, her career, even her emotional role in the story all shifted when Showtime brought her to the screen. The result is that casual fans think they know her, but they don't. So let's pull back the curtain and look at the Deborah Morgan that the show never gave us. And by the end, you'll realize you've only ever seen half of who Deborah really was. In the show, Jennifer Carpenter brought Deborah to life with this mix of toughness and vulnerability. She's foul-mouthed, yes, but she's also endearing, wounded, insecure, but ultimately driven by a desperate need to prove herself. But in Jeff Lindsay's books, Deborah's personality goes to extremes. She's much harsher, less polished, and nowhere near as sympathetic. Book Deborah doesn't just curse, she unleashes a constant stream of rage-filled profanity. She's reckless, brash, and often a liability to herself and others. She's not the vulnerable little sister struggling for approval. She's a ticking time bomb, ready to explode at anyone who stands in her way. That change alone reshaped how audiences saw her. TV Deborah became a fan favorite because she had layers. Under the tough talk, she cared deeply about Dexter, about her career, about being respected in a male-dominated department. Book Deborah, by contrast, often feels like a chaotic storm tearing through scenes. Readers get the sense she's more of a wild card than a character meant to anchor the story. But the personality changes don't stop there. Let's talk about her career path. In the TV show, Deborah's arc is one of ambition and progression. She starts as a vice cop working the streets and slowly climbs her way up, eventually earning a spot as detective and even reaching the rank of lieutenant. Her rise through the ranks gives her story a sense of growth, of fighting against the odds and winning. It also allowed the show to use her career as a source of tension. Each promotion brought her closer to Dexter's secret, raising the stakes every season. But in the books, Deborah never gets that clean upward trajectory. Her career is messy, filled with setbacks, clashes with authority, and missed opportunities. She doesn't get the spotlight the way TV Deb does. In fact, her struggles highlight just how much the novels keep her in the background compared to Dexter. She's not the professional climbing the ladder. She's constantly overlooked, constantly fighting, and never truly in control. That choice by Jeff Lindsay gave Book Deborah a raw authenticity, but it also meant she wasn't as central to Dexter's journey. She was there, yes, but she wasn't the heart of the story. Showtime flipped that completely. They took Deborah from the sidelines and turned her into Dexter's emotional anchor, the one person whose opinion truly mattered. And this brings us to the biggest difference of all, her relationship with Dexter. In the books, Deborah respects her brother, but their bond doesn't carry the same intensity as in the show. She never suspects his darkness in the same layered way. Dexter, for her, is a useful ally, a trusted forensic expert, but she's not constantly orbiting around him, not wrestling with suspicion and loyalty in the way TV Deb does. In the show, that relationship becomes the beating heart of the story. Deborah's love, her suspicion, her horror, and her ultimate discovery of Dexter's true nature drive the later seasons. In fact, some would argue that Deborah's arc is the real tragedy of the series. Even more than Dexter's, she goes from loyal sister to conflicted cop to a woman broken by the weight of her brother's secret. That emotional journey simply doesn't exist in the novels. And this is where the tension really spikes, because when you compare the two versions of Deborah, it feels like you're looking at two completely different characters. One is a raw, foul-mouthed storm who stumbles through her career and never becomes central to Dexter's downfall. The other is a layered, vulnerable, emotionally complex sister who becomes the most important relationship in Dexter's life. So which version is the real Deborah Morgan, and why did the show rewrite her so drastically? The truth is, the showrunners needed her. The novels focus almost exclusively on Dexter himself. His voice, his perspective, his darkly comic narration carry the story. But television is different. To sustain 8 seasons of drama, Dexter couldn't exist in a vacuum. He needed a counterpart, someone to humanize him, someone to force him into choices that weren't just about killing. And that's what the show made Deborah into. They transformed her from a side character into the emotional core of the series. But here's the thing, that change didn't just make her more important, it made her more beloved. Fans connected with TV Deborah because she felt real. She was strong but insecure, tough but wounded, a cop who could go toe-to-toe with killers but break down in tears behind closed doors. She represented the cost of living in Dexter's orbit, the human price of being tied to someone with such a dark secret. Book Deborah, by comparison, is almost too chaotic to serve that role. She's entertaining, yes, but she doesn't carry the same weight. She doesn't break your heart the way Jennifer Carpenter's Deborah did. She doesn't feel like the emotional glue holding Dexter's world together, and that's why fans who only watched the show missed something crucial. They never saw the version of Deborah who was rougher, meaner, and more self-destructive. A Deborah who wasn't rewritten to make audiences care, but instead left raw and jagged on the page. So what does that mean for Dexter fans? It means that Deborah Morgan exists in 2 forms, and depending on which version you know, your entire view of the series changes. In the books, she's the reckless sister, always one step behind. In the show, she's the tragic heroine who defines Dexter's humanity. To Deborah, 2 completely different legacies. And maybe that's the shocking truth here, that Showtime didn't just adapt Jeff Lindsay's novels. They rewrote Deborah Morgan into something the author never intended. They turned her into Dexter's anchor, his conscience, his undoing. And for better or worse, that change may be the reason the show lasted as long as it did. So when you think about Deborah in the books versus Deb in the show, remember this. Fans who only watched Dexter never saw the Deborah who was hiding in Jeff Lindsay's pages. And fans who only read the books never experienced the Deborah who broke millions of hearts on TV. 2 Deborahs, 2 worlds, and one big question for you. Which version do you think was better? If you learned something new about Dexter today, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more hidden truths from the world of Dexter. And while you're here, drop a comment and let me know which Deborah Morgan you prefer, the unfiltered chaos of the novels or the tragic heart of the TV series.